Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing fine.
Good.
Ready to go.
Yes, lots happening today.
Yes. And,
usually we have a slow Monday, but it's not slow.
And, I thought maybe things were calming down. Nobody blew up the world yet.
Yeah.
But there's still a few hot spots. And it almost looks like there's new ones. One settles down a little bit, another one pops up. But I don't think that's the case. I think there are hot spots that are smoldering, and all of a sudden somebody throws a few more logs on it and stimulates it. But because, look, I think we've been involved when we blamed everything on 9/11 on Iraq. Of course, a few people in Afghanistan, they had a little trouble figuring out what was going on. But that's we're going on 20 years, and yet there's still trouble there. I think that's where we built the biggest embassy ever.
Yeah. And
there's probably thousands of people in there, but it looks like chaos has come back there, and there's religious chaos there. Sarder is involved in it, and he has a lot of followers in there, and sorting all that out, it's going to be religious and political power, United States interests. We have to protect our interests. I mean, we just can't turn it over to the Iraqis. We have to concede that we do have interests there. So this looks like it's sort of just in the last day or two just sort of exploded, and a palace chaos too, and Capitol buildings.
Yeah.
I guess we'll be keeping an eye on Iraq, and along with the other spots going on, and we'll even mention a couple other spots before the program's over.
Well, we don't often do breaking news here because we're not really equipped to deal with breaking news, but it is, in fact, it's just this last hour or so that we've noticed a lot happening. And let's start with that substitute first picture. Now, this is not an image that Washington, D.C. would like you to see. Reports of U.S. Embassy being evacuated as Baghdad's green zone is breached. This is from Zero Head. There you have the proverbial helicopter on top of a building that we all remember from the fall of Saigon. Now, it can be confirmed that this is accurate, that this is actually a U.S. government helicopter on the top of the U.S. Embassy. Nevertheless, there have been helicopters evacuating people. We saw a motorcade at high speed that they said was either UN or U.S. personnel out of the green zone. Let's do the next clip. This is just a regular first clip. This is from Hedge, what we watched this morning. Go back one, please. You can just do that first one. Reports of U.S. Embassy being evacuated as Baghdad's green zone breached. That goes along with this. Well, here's how it started, and this does remind you of what happened in Sri Lanka and elsewhere, Dr. Paul, if we do this next one. So the supporters of al-Sadr have broken into the presidential palace. They took a swim in the presidential pool, and they are having a good time, but there's not a lot of other good time, because if you look at the next one, NBC News, the chaos is increasing. Iraq orders curfew as followers of Shia cleric storm palace after he retires. So a little bit of background, because we don't really want to get into the weeds too thickly, is that Sadr's political party, the political party oriented with him, did win the last parliamentary elections. However, they haven't been able to form a majority. Sadr kept arguing for new elections, and this has been months that they've been absolutely politically stalemated. Somehow, the tinderbox has exploded now as we speak, literally. Nobody knows what happens. I've seen video of the border brigades now arming up and going into the green zone. This is Sadr's personal army after he resigned from politics in protest this morning over this. So this is a breaking thing, but we can say one thing definitively, is that after 20 years in Iraq, as you said before we started, just after 20 years in Afghanistan, the interventions have not worked.
Yes, and this is something that people have a hard time understanding how bad this is. We start off by concentrating on Iraq, because there's something special going on. But in a way, it has to be seen in the bigger picture too, because it's a reflection of the policy, the foreign policy. And I don't think we can say that this is the Biden foreign policy that caused all these trouble.
No.
Because it's much bigger than that, and it's pervasive, and it has a lot of people behind the scenes, like the deep state and the profiteers. It's all involved. And so, and we're scattered around the world. And I think probably the most significant thing coming from this is a reflection of maybe a major crack in the empire, our foreign policy, our prestige around the world, and how long, the fake dollars that we can convince the people you need. If you don't need them, we're going to cancel you. All of a sudden, that is up for grabs too. People talking about other currencies. So in the big picture, this is another step. But once again, it's one that, in the last week, we didn't read too many predictions. I think in general, our viewpoint can predict problems to come. It's sort of like in economics, we can predict that when you spend too much money in money, there has to be a correction. Well, this is the correction in foreign policy.
Yeah.
When you have a foreign policy driven by fake news and for accumulating wealth and spending and raising money for the military-industrial complex, expect a correction. And sometimes it takes a long time. It's been smoldering over there now for more than 20 years, and that to me, if there's such a thing, but there's bubbles in economics. The longer you inflate, the worse the correction. The longer we inflate our military presence around the world, the bigger the problem will be when there is a demand for a correction. And I don't think it looks like we're strong. But you know what? The hawks in this country would say, Ron, you're right. But what is their answer?
Yeah.
Build up more, build up. We've allowed ourselves to be defenseless, and so they would agree. I've just postulated. They would agree that we are in trouble, and we are looking weak. We are foreign policy. That means, and you've heard them.
Yeah.
And Republicans and Democrats are saying we need a much tougher foreign policy.
So that's such a great point that you make, because this is exactly how it will go. Biden lost Afghanistan, then Biden lost Iraq, then Biden lost Libya. No, this is, as you say, a bipartisan foreign policy, and that's such a great line. A correction is coming, and this is the correction that we're seeing. And the correction is happening on the streets. And here's a couple of video clips out of Iraq this morning that I didn't think that I would see. To be honest with you, there's some short ones, but this shows the violence, live bullets in the street, live ammunition, fatalities supposedly. Let's have a listen to this. How do we full screen that? Let's do that next one too. And this is happening almost literally as we speak. Let's go ahead and full screen that. This is basically in your face to the government. They're taking over. This is what a real insurgency looks like, right? Not a guy with buffalo horns. And by the way, that NBC News clip that I put on earlier, that photo, and I forgot to mention it, that's also iconic because those are people standing up on the wall of the green zone, that NBC News one, breaking down that wall. Again, iconic images of walls being blown up, broken down, of helicopters evacuating U.S. Embassy personnel. I mean, you say history repeats itself. It appears that that's what's happening.
I'm going to go back a step. We're talking about who gets the blame. Biden's going to get the blame, or the Republicans going to get the blame. But I think in many ways, all that blame back and forth by the establishment is just a lot of noise, because basically they're all working together. And everybody knows without saying it's all Trump's fault. And we need to put him in prison and never let him run for office again because they're terrified of him.
That'll solve all our problems. But here's the thing. This is why we wanted to lead with this, because I was thinking earlier over the weekend watching the news that, Libya's blowing up. We maybe should talk about that. And let's put on this next clip, because there have been violent clashes in Libya. I think the prime minister in Tripoli has evacuated. If we can put up that next Al Jazeera, there we go. 32 killed in Libya's Tripoli as fears grow of a wider war. There are different factions. One is backed by the UN, one is backed by another group, and then the South, there are other groups that are running things. They're all clashing in Libya now, violence in the street. In fact, if we can do those 2 more video clips just to get them out of the way, this should just give you a taste of what's now happening in Libya. I mean, Dr. Paul, it may look like Chicago, but it's actually Libya, right? Yeah. Well, let's do that. Let's do the next one too. Let's do that next one too, and just get them out of the way, because this is what's happening here in Libya over the weekend. I think there's another video. There we go. Yeah, let's. Yeah, we can take that down just to show the
great for the bullet industry.
Yeah, for the bullet industry, but you know, the underlining, we can actually cut that off. I think there's the sound is still on. I think, you know, obviously the conclusion, and our conclusion is this is U.S. interventionism laid bare. Everything they claimed it would do, all of these years, the war on terror, everything, we're going to democratize the Middle East. We're going to make Libya a model democracy. It's done nothing but promote death, chaos, misery, destruction.
Well, I have a solution for this. Making use of good people who have had some experience with Libya, say. Because I remember when, Eisenhower was president for 8 years, and then that would be Kennedy, and Kennedy was having an international problem going on, maybe it was Cuba or whatnot, and it was serious, but the president gets on the air, and it was a reassurance type of thing, and actually I didn't find it offensive back then. I wasn't looking in between lines, but it was the fact that he had a little meeting today and explained the situation to former President Eisenhower, and, you know, a general, and he had been president. And I thought, well, you know, that sounds like a reasonable thing to do. But do you think that's going to happen now? Or are they going to call up Hillary on Libya?
Yeah.
And say, hey, Hillary, how do you handle this thing?
Yeah.
What are we going to do with the weapons?
I almost put that clip up of her saying, we came, we saw, he died. She was so thrilled.
Giggled.
Yeah, she thought it was so funny that Gaddafi, for all of his faults, and I'm sure there were plenty, like every leader around the world, but we didn't have this going on before we decided to democratize the country. Just like with Saddam, yes, not the kind of guy you may want to live next door to you, right? Right. But nevertheless, you didn't have 20 years of misery and 1 million dead people. So we're going to keep an eye on this, Dr. Paul, and see what happens.
Right.
The way things are going, you know, I mean, I wrote myself a little note before we started. I mean, my prediction, I'm not a predictor, but I think when the smoke clears after what's happening in Iraq this morning, we're going to see that Iran has come out on top. And I don't like the zero-sum game of Iran wins or whatever, but Iran affiliated forces, as probably is natural to a degree, will come out on top unless the U.S. decides to start bombing Iraq again. And if that happens, if Biden opens that can of worms, I can't imagine that happening, but then all bets are off.
Well, the Republicans have made a lot of mistakes with Iran, but also Biden has made things much worse. He has driven, you know, the Russians and the Chinese together,
yeah.
And they're our two arch enemies. You know, we
Yeah.
have to be prepared to fight both of them at once. But Iran is still around there, and I guess we know who they'll align themselves with, and that's a big deal there, and yet we continue to do it, and I just wonder what goes through their minds when they do these policies. Not that I think Biden is lying awake at night wondering about it. But his advisors, he has to have people telling him what the policies ought to be doing, and then you say, why are they doing it? And of course, there's all kinds of justification. Answering the why is difficult, but because maybe it is a conspiracy on their part to set the stage, because some of them may even have Marxist, secret Marxist feelings and beliefs that they want to see the chaos, and they're doing a pretty good job on that.
Yeah, or there's a little bit of that, I think, and a little bit of them just being dumb, or evil and dumb, maybe.
Well, that's a bad combination.
Let's move away from foreign policy. Well, in a way, away from foreign policy, because this next clip, our good friend Jonathan Turley, I think, did a good job summarizing this other news over the weekend. Zuckerberg, who of course, as we know, was the founder and CEO of Facebook, Zuckerberg reveals that the FBI told his company to be wary of, quote, Russian disinformation. And this is amazing because it was right at the time, Dr. Paul, that Hunter Biden's laptop, which we now know is true, is in fact accurately his laptop, was coming out. The FBI gets in, he went on Rogan, Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan's show over the weekend and revealed this. Let's put on that next clip. This is from Turley's article about it. And I think, frankly, it's astonishing. Zuckerberg stated on the Joe Rogan Experience that, quote, the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of a dump that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. Just before the news of the laptop came out, the FBI comes and said, something big's going to happen, but wink, wink, it's Russian disinformation.
And then there's little bits in there showing that Zuckerberg's coming across as a more reasonable person, and negotiate and all. But when I was reading this little story, the thought that crossed my mind was that the Zuckerbergs of the world and all the business people, and they work together, and we've talked about the special economic benefits from them. But it to me was like when the FBI comes, to me it's almost, I thought, are they the spokesman for the mob?
Yeah.
Because you want protection. And that's what our government has turned into. And there hasn't been too many years ago, probably undeserved. The FBI did, there was a little bit more respect from it. But I don't know how it could ever be very respectful if people know how J. Edgar Hoover ran it. Yeah. He initiated it, he created it. And matter of fact, he'd be aghast at how far advanced it got on becoming the mob police.
That's great 2 points. The first of all is the partnership between the social media and the government. But the second of all, in a way, although yes, Zuckerberg caved to this and he did admit, we didn't nuke it like Twitter did, but we kind of used our algorithms to push it down so nobody saw it. But at the same time, in his defense, you're sitting there, you've got your team, your company sitting there, the FBI comes in and says, hey, there's some Russian propaganda that's about to be dropped. Wink, wink, you don't want to let that go out. So what is they going to? He's going to go up against the FBI with this company, like you said.
And they didn't even announce the problem. They never talked about buying or anything else.
Yeah.
So, but we have to look for something positive. But more and more people, are waking up to this, and I think that is good. But but it tells you where we are with the FBI on the searching of Donald Trump's household, his home, and that to me is really over the top. And then they go through the legal process. Oh well, we can get to see that. Some days I think, why should Trump pretend that they will treat him in a not a half decent, a 10% decent fashion.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen. They just they go and do whatever they want. So, but he goes through the process and the information, and they argue what you can release and what you can't release, and all those details. And it's like it's either our way and Trump is guilty and it's the end of the world if we don't find him guilty.
Yeah.
And but then he wins he wins on, we want to get this information out, we want to read this, why did you do this, what authority you have to search my house and go through my wife's clothing and this sort of thing. So what do they do? They go in and they march in. They do what they have to do, and it was just horrible. So he gets it. We get to see the papers. We're going to find out exactly what they justified it. And if there's anything more annoying to me, but they do a good job on some of the conservative stations, they put, here they are, here are the papers, and you can't find any typed words. Everything is struck out. Yeah. I wonder what % has been redacted. It looks to me like about 90% of it. What a joke! You would think just mocking them as this is part of justice after you've had the FBI agents already confess to the dirty tricks that they play and how they get their search warrants, and it is a strong breakdown of law and order, back to the mob psychology.
Yeah, it's corruption, plain and simple. The problem is the Republican reaction. I think a lot of it's going to be, well, just as soon as we get in power, we're going to use that for our own ends. Instead of we need to wipe out the power, throw the ring into the fire. But a lot of people will say, well, it's no biggie. The FBI is just doing its job. It's alerting some of these companies that might be something coming down. Well, this next clip, and this is written by Paul Sperry for the Epoch Times. This is why it's a big deal, Dr. Paul. This came out over the weekend. 8 in 10 Americans think that Hunter Biden laptop cover-up changed the election outcome, poll finds. So they did a poll. They found 79% of Americans believe that hiding the truth about that laptop changed the elections by calling it Russian disinformation, as all those 20 or 30 former intelligence officials assured us, and they lied, they flat out lied. But if they had known what it was, it could have changed the outcome. So if you want to talk about election interference, about throwing elections, about cheating, about fake elections, this is the epitome of a fake election, and it falls right in the lap of the FBI and the deep state.
But the news is shifting. If you just look at the news and the mainstream media, actually there's a sentiment out there, and I'm sure it introduces a sense of loss of confidence for the Republicans who thought, oh, this is a cakewalk, But the news is starting to show that even with all this stuff, but that poll actually revealed what really is going on. So, but it's if that is true, which probably most of it is, if the Republicans can't use it, if they can't use the riots of the Black Lives Matter, how much killing was going on, how many windows were broken, how many people were released. Do you know that Dukakis lost a whole election over one criminal being left out early? And I always thought, they maybe they made a mistake in granting leniency on this one person.
Yeah.
But the Republicans used that to the hilt, and that made him soft on crime. But people don't want to be soft on crime. They're begging not to be soft on crime, and yet this poll showed. The Democratic poll showed the people are shifting. They could never put up with Trump, anybody but Trump. So, well, maybe Biden has a brother, maybe he has a son that could run.
Who knows? That'd be great. It would be great. Banana Republic City. Well, McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, hates Trump more than he loves winning the Senate, I think. So that's going to be a problem.
Maybe he's ready to retire.
Well, let's hope so. The next story is a little one that we want to point out, and our friends over at the Libertarian Institute wrote this, and this is via Zero Hedge. But this is about our trade with Russia since the invasion. America has imported over $6 billion in goods from Russia since the Ukraine invasion, Dr. Paul. $6 billion imported from Russia.
That involves some oil, which is ironic, but but it's a lot of other products that we bought from them. See, trade is good, even in the midst of chaos when we're trying to figure out how we're going to bomb them. But the trade is good. But people don't, maybe they do recall that the statistic a month ago was how much profit the Russians made just in selling oil, not to Americans, but around the world. So they've compensated rather well on getting their oil out. Who knows how the best way? Probably through China. Maybe the Iranians would like to help them out. Maybe the Indians would help them out. But anyway, the oil has gotten out, and they've made a lot of profits on selling of oil in the midst of all this.
Yeah, it is amazing. And you were kind of joking before the show when we were talking in your office that the Russians must really have a top-notch spy in the U.S. government, because everything that they do is just kind of going their way. We put on sanctions. they start making more money. And you know, the Europeans are in a heck of a bind. I mean, they are in panic mode because they thought they could go green overnight and stick it to the Russians. And now they're actually meeting in the Czech Republic, I think, in a little bit to talk about what are we going to do this winter because we don't have any gas. So their idea is they're going to give subsidies to people to pay for their higher energy bills, which is also hilarious because those subsidies are going to go directly to Putin, right, to pay the higher prices.
They say traditionally, and this is probably true, that Germany and Russia have always been at odds. And then after the Cold War ended, they had pipelines being built and they were getting along a little bit better. But some people, want to put that knife in there again, and it has to do with the big pipeline. And so what the Europeans are starting to wake up is what they're doing is stupid too. I mean, why should they listen to our foreign policy experts, and we claim it's all for national security, our national security. And then why are we doing so poorly then? If it's for our national security, and yet they do this, and I think people would like to see or try to prevent. And of course, when they interfere with the pipeline, that means the Europeans aren't going to be as dependent. But I think what they're saying is, why are we doing this? Yeah. Did you see the picture the other day? I think it was in Poland that the people were lined up by the thousands to get a bucket of coal to help keep warm and away. And this is modern day advancement. Oh, jeez. And it's all preventable. It's hard to treat once you get the cancer and it's spread, but it's so easy to prevent. And it's prevented by just a different attitude in foreign policy and economic policy, where the masses of people, the majority, do better. There's a lot more prosperity and certainly a lot more peace, and yet we still do that. And then they say, oh, we can't go back to free markets. That's a big job. Yeah, well, it's a lot better than pursuing what we're doing. That's what's worse. But the most important message that we never seem to learn is how do you prevent it? How do we do it? Like Vietnam was supposed to teach us a lesson. Oh, the useless killing and the money and all that's going on. But we better take a different attitude. We did for about 6 months. Yeah. And then we knew that even that 6 months, they were just planning their next strategy.
Yeah, we mentioned it. We didn't talk about it today, but we mentioned it before the show. I mean, maybe when the smoke clears on this one, it's going to turn out, maybe in 50 years, it'll turn out that this whole Russia-Ukraine war was basically just a U.S. covert op to prevent the Nord Stream 2 from opening. Because remember, we were on the verge of that opening, and the last thing the U.S. wants is to see Germany and Russia get along, because that means the U.S. is irrelevant in Europe. Can't do that. That might cause us to close some bases. So I wouldn't be surprised. It'd be the conspiracy theory of all conspiracy theories.
But that would undermine NATO. Do you want to undermine NATO?
No, only bad people do that.
You might be censored.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm going to close, excuse me, my Monday reminder. We are in the home stretch. Put up the last clip, the last picture, please. Anatomy of a police state. Everything is set in stone. We are printing the programs today. It's going to be a great event. I think we have 9 speakers, Dr. Paul. Boom, boom, boom. September 3rd, 2022, Westin Washington Dulles Airport. There are tickets left. Get them. Join us. Lots of great speakers. It's going to be a great event. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm starting my drive tomorrow. I'll be here with you, but then I'm going to be on the road driving to D.C.
Keep your cell phone on. I might have a question for you.
Will do, Roger.
Well, we have... We know that America's imported $6 billion from Russia under these conditions. How much? I wonder if under the same years we're not antagonistic quite as much as with Russia right now. But boy, there's a lot of people who just have to stomp on China and interrupt the trade. The saving grace is trade. That was the whole principle. If some people say, well, some people benefited at the expense of others, which is a bunch of malarkey. It was a false economic premise that both sides, both countries, both people, everybody benefits, not just the person who sold something. So they said that, well, you can't do that, but that is exactly what we need to trade, even in the midst of this. Well, you know, I'm like, let's see how our time. I'll tell a real short story. When I was in the military, we were traveling as a flight surgeon, and I was in Pakistan, and we went up to the Khyber Pass, and Afghanistan was across the border, and the Afghans were not on our side, not at that time. Later on, we were on their side when the Russians were in there. But anyway, we went up to that, and it was a border, and the Khyber Pass is, you know, a lot of history in there, and I learned a lot on that trip just looking at that. But the whole thing is the reason we drove up there because we were at Peshawar, and it was an hour drive in an old rickety truck. But the locals were taking us, and all the military people who knew the inside track. So we piled in that truck and we drove up these mountain trails and had a lot of talk about British history and all. So we get up there, and then they say, well, we're going shopping. And this is just mountainous region. I said, where are you going shopping? And they said, oh, there's a cave up here. And it's a cave that ties east with west. The Russians over there, the Americans over here, and where they all go into the cave, and it's like a big store, you know. And the Russians wanted something, Americans wanted some of that. So there was all this trade and activity, and this was under this mountain. And all I could think about, you know, above us, they're shooting at each other. The insanity of it. The trade goes on, you know, and it does serve a purpose, but I wish they would do the more trading and be more honest about it to prevent the stupid wars that we get involved in. So much for a story.
Great story. Fantastic story.
Well, we're all done, I think.
All right, very good. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in today, and hopefully we see a lot of you at the conference, but it'll be a good time to talk about the police state, and just to make sure you know where we're coming from. We do not like the police state. And the police state is a result of all these bad things that we allow our government to do, and then they become a policeman. And unfortunately, a lot of people think, oh, they're the police, they're the government, and they'll take care of us and they'll protect us. That's not true, so we're not going to be defending the police state in any way whatsoever. So please come to our conference if you can, but I want to thank you very much today for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.